Maya Reeves was 38 years old when her ex-husband stood on the sidewalk in front of the house she had painted, repaired, and loved for 11 years and told her, with the tone of a man announcing a schedule change, that the locks had already been changed. She had spent 12 years being the kind of wife that made Marcus look good. 12 years of packing his lunches, showing up to his firm's holiday parties in the dress he preferred, keeping quiet when his colleagues said something that needed answering, and building a home so warm and clean and functional that he once told his mother it ran itself. She had worked as a pastry chef at Harlow's, a mid-tier restaurant on Decatur Street in Atlanta, clocking 50-hour weeks on her feet while Marcus climbed at Brennan and Cole Architecture. She made $41 million a year. She never complained. She deposited every check into the joint account and never once asked what he was doing with the rest. What Marcus did not know, what he had never thought to ask about in 12 years of marriage, was that her grandmother, Ida Mae Reeves, had left her something. Not jewelry, not furniture, not the kind of inheritance a man like Marcus would think to look for. He had no idea that 6 years earlier, while he was at a conference in Charlotte, Maya had sat in the office of a small business attorney in Decatur with a sealed envelope her grandmother had left specifically for her, and had walked out with the deed to a commercial property on Moreland Avenue and $67,000 in an account Marcus didn't know existed. She never hid it from him. She simply never announced it. He never asked. What happened after he changed those locks would cost Marcus everything he thought he had built. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm went off at 4:52 a.m. on the morning of the day Maya Reeves' life came apart. She did not know that yet. She reached across the nightstand, silenced it without opening her eyes, and lay still for 30 seconds the way she always did. Long enough to remember what was waiting for her at work. Short enough not to fall back asleep. There were 12 croissants to laminate before the first bread service. A birthday cake for a table of 6 at 7 that evening. The walk-in needed organizing because Tuesday's produce delivery had been sloppy. She sat up. She pulled on her kitchen clogs and her checked pants and her white double-breasted jacket. She tied her hair back and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for exactly as long as it took to see that she was ready. Marcus was still asleep when she left. He had gotten home late from what he called a client dinner, the third one in 2 weeks at a restaurant she had never been to. She had not asked. She scraped eyes off her 2014 Honda Accord, which had a slow leak in the rear passenger tires she kept forgetting to patch, and drove to Harlow's in the gray Atlanta morning with the heat on full and an old Anita Baker album running low on the radio. She had been a pastry chef for 16 years. She had started in a hotel kitchen at 22, moved to a bakery at 25, taken a line position at Harlow's at 28, and worked her way up to lead pastry in 4 years. She knew this kitchen the way she knew her own hands. She knew which oven ran hot on the left side, which walk-in door needed to be lifted slightly before it would seal, which prep cook needed clear instructions, and which one needed to be left alone to figure things out. She ran her station with quiet competence and almost no noise. The executive chef, a stout, exacting man named Gideon Bauer, had told her twice in private that she was the best technician he had ever worked with. She did not repeat this to anyone. She was in the middle of her second lamination fold when her phone buzzed on the steel counter. She did not look at it. She finished the fold, covered the dough, and then glanced at the screen. It was a text from Marcus. It had come in at 6:11 a.m. It was 4 words: "We need to talk." She called him on her break at 8:30. He did not answer. She called again at 10:15, between the bread service and the lunch prep. He picked up on the second ring and told her, in the even, considered tone she had always found reassuring and now recognized as practiced, that he had been thinking about this for a long time, that it was not working, and that he had spoken to a lawyer. He said the word lawyer with a particular softness, as if it were kindness. She stood in the narrow corridor beside the back exit of Harlow's, with the smell of butter and sugar behind her, and heard him say that she should not worry because it would all be handled properly, and she could stay with her sister while things got settled. She did not say much. She said okay. She said she needed to get back inside. She hung up and stood there for a moment with the phone in her hand and the cold air coming through the gap in the door, and then she went back to her station and finished the rest of her shift without a word to anyone. She had no idea what he had already done. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday. She found them on the kitchen table when she got home at 7, held down by the salt shaker as if someone had placed them there with great care. The house was quiet. Marcus's car was not in the driveway. His closet, she discovered, was half empty. He had taken his clothes, his watch collection, his college boxes from the hall closet, and the good camera he kept on the top shelf of the office. Had taken the espresso machine. She sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The papers were detailed. They listed the house as marital property to be sold and split. They listed the joint account. They listed her salary at Harlow's. They did not list the commercial property on Moreland Avenue. They did not list the account. Marcus, who had reviewed and approved their joint tax returns every April without ever reading past the first page, had no idea either of those things existed. His lawyer had built the filing entirely from what Marcus had told him. And what Marcus knew about Maya's finances was exactly what she had told him, which was everything that came through the joint account, and nothing else. She called her sister Diane that night. Diane drove over from Smyrna in 20 minutes and sat across from her at the kitchen table and listened to everything. When Maya was done, Diane picked up the divorce papers and read the first 3 pages. Then she set them down. She sighed. He doesn't mention the property. Maya said no. Diane said, does he know about it? Maya said she did not think so. Diane sat back. She said, then you need a lawyer before he finds out. Maya called Patricia Osei the next morning. Patricia was a family law attorney in Midtown who had grown up in the same neighborhood as Maya's mother and had handled 3 other divorces in their extended family. She was small and precise and completely unhurried. Her office had degrees from Spelman and Emory Law on the wall and a single live orchid on the windowsill. She read the filing, asked for the deed to the Moreland property, asked for the account statements, asked for the date of the property transfer, and then folded her hands on her desk and said, "He has no claim to the property. The deed predates the marriage discovery by 6 years, and the transfer was from an inheritance. In Georgia, that is separate property. He cannot touch it." Then she said, "The more interesting question is what you want to do with it." Maya drove past the Moreland Avenue property on a Sunday afternoon in February. She had been to it a few times since her grandmother left it to her. It was a single-story commercial building, roughly 2,400 square feet, set back from the street with a flat roof and a deep parking lot. Her grandmother had rented it to a dry cleaner for years. The dry cleaner had closed 18 months before Ida Mae died, and the building had sat empty since. The exterior was worn but solid. Maya got out of her car and walked around the perimeter. She tried the side door. She looked through the front windows at the empty concrete floor, the bare walls, the old utility connections running along the back wall. She stood in the parking lot for a long time. She had been cooking in other people's kitchens for 16 years. She had built every dish that had come out of her station at Harlow's, from raw components, from nothing to plated perfection. On a schedule, every night, without credit on the menu, and without her name anywhere on the building. She drove a 2014 Honda with a slow leak in the rear tire. She made $41,000 a year. She had a grandmother who believed in her enough to leave her something real. She stood in that parking lot and thought about all of it, and then she called Diane. She sighed. "What do you know about food trucks?" It was not a decision made in grief. That was the thing people would get wrong later, when the story was more complicated and more people knew it. They would assume she had done it because of Marcus, as a response to Marcus, as proof of something to Marcus. But she had been making this dish her whole life. The idea of a kitchen that belonged to her, a menu that answered only to her, food that bore her name. Marcus had nothing to do with it. It had simply removed the last reason she had been waiting. She spent 3 months learning. She drove to a commercial kitchen supply warehouse in College Park and walked every aisle twice. She took a food truck financing course online, sitting at her sister's kitchen table after Diane's kids were asleep. She applied for her food handler's license and her mobile food permit and her business license with the same methodical patience she applied to a laminated dough. One step, then the next, 10 the next. No skipping. She hired a contractor to walk the Moreland building with her and write up what it would cost to convert the front section into a commissary kitchen. She got 3 quotes. She chose the middle one. She bought the truck in April. It was a 2019 Freightliner step van, white, with 94,000 miles and a clean maintenance record. The previous owner had used it for a barbecue operation that had not survived the pandemic. The kitchen equipment was stripped, but the shell was sound. She paid $28,000 from the account, which left her enough for the build-out with a small cushion. She drove it home to Diane's driveway and sat in the cab for a moment with both hands on the wheel. The divorce was grinding forward. Marcos's lawyer had been aggressive about the house, claiming it as marital property and pushing for a sale. Patricia had countered with a full accounting of the joint mortgage payments, including the 3 years when Maya's income had been the larger share, while Marcos finished his certification. The negotiation was slow and occasionally unpleasant. Marcos had said, through his lawyer, that he was surprised to learn she had a property he did not know about. His lawyer had filed a request to include it in the marital estate. Patricia had filed a response that was 41 pages long and included the notarized deed transfer, the probate records from Ida May's estate, and a state statute on inherited property in Georgia that Patricia had cited in 3 previous cases, and won every time. The judge denied the motion in a 2-paragraph ruling. Maya named the truck Ida May's. She had a graphic designer her niece recommended paint the name in warm, deep gold letters on both sides. Against the background, the dark reddish-brown of sweet potato. The font was wide and clean, the kind of lettering that read from half a block away. She had the designer add a small detail her grandmother had always used: a single illustrated magnolia blossom at the end of the name, tucked just under the A. It looked like something that had always existed. It looked like it had been there for years. The menu was not complicated. She had done complicated at Harlow's for a decade and knew what it cost. Ida May's had 12 items. 6 of them were her grandmother's recipes, the ones she had learned by watching, not by measuring, the ones she had reconstructed in Diane's kitchen at midnight, until they were right again. Sweet potato biscuits with honey butter, smothered chicken and rice, banana pudding in small wax cups with a wafer balanced on top. She added 6 of her own: a cornbread waffle with hot honey and fried chicken thighs, a smoked turkey and collard green pressed sandwich, a lemon chess pie square, 2 rotating daily specials. Everything was made fresh in the commissary kitchen on Moreland Avenue, starting at 5 in the morning. Nothing was reheated. Nothing sat more than 2 hours. She opened on a Wednesday in June, at the corner of Irwin and Edgewood in Inman Park. She had posted to Instagram 3 times in the week before, nothing elaborate, whose clean photographs of the food, and a note about where she would be. Diane was there at 11 when the window opened. 4 other people she did not know were there too. By noon, there was a line. By 1:30, she was sold out, and she had to close the window with 20 people still waiting. She apologized through the window. Several of them asked when she would be back. She said, Friday. Friday was bigger. By September, she had a following. By November, she was featured in a neighborhood food blog with 40,000 subscribers. By January, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a small piece in their food section. The photograph showed Maya standing in front of the truck with her arms crossed and the gold lettering behind her and the magnolia blossom just over her shoulder. The caption read, Maya Reeves of Ida May's food truck. The piece ran on a Tuesday. By Thursday morning, her Instagram had gained 4,200 followers, and her phone had messages from 3 catering inquiries and a local morning television show. Marcos saw it on Thursday morning. He had not spoken to Maya directly since November of the previous year, when they had been in the same room at Patricia Osei's office for the final settlement conference. He had been polite and quiet and had signed the documents without looking at her. He had received a smaller share of the house sale than his lawyer had initially projected, a development he had accepted without much visible reaction. He had moved into a new apartment in Buckhead, with high ceilings and a view he mentioned to colleagues. He was doing well, broadly. He was not thinking about Maya. Then his associate showed him the AJC piece on her phone during a Thursday morning meeting break. She had pulled it up because she lived near Inman Park and had eaten at the truck twice. She sighed. Did you know her? Marcus said, we were married. His associate said, she's incredible. The banana pudding is... And then she read the look on his face and stopped talking. He read the article 3 times in the bathroom. It was not the article that did it. It was the photograph, the truck, the name in gold. The way she was standing, there was nothing in the photograph that looked like a woman who had been diminished. There was nothing that looked like a woman who had gone to stay with her sister. She looked like someone who had been there for a long time and knew it. He stood in the bathroom of his glass and steel office building and felt something that he would not have been able to name accurately, which was the particular discomfort of a person who has organized his understanding of a story around the wrong character. He called her that afternoon. She did not answer. He called again the next day. She did not answer. On the third day, he left a voicemail. Esaidi had seen the article, and he thought it was wonderful and he was proud of what she had built. And if she ever wanted to grab coffee and catch up, he would like that. His voice in the voicemail was careful and controlled and had a warmth in it that sounded like something he had constructed in the elevator on the way up to make the call. Maya listened to it once. She set her phone face down on the prep counter. Diane was standing across from her, snapping the ends off green beans for the next morning's special. Diane said, "Who was that?" Maya said, "Marcus." Diane did not say anything. She snapped another green bean. Maya picked up the phone and deleted the voicemail and put the phone in her jacket pocket. She sighed, "I need you to taste the honey butter. I think it needs more salt." That was the end of it. The television segment aired on a Thursday in February. It was a 6-minute piece on the local morning show, filmed at the truck on a cold, bright morning. And Maya had spent 4 minutes explaining the menu and the commissary kitchen and her grandmother's recipes, and 2 minutes standing at the truck window watching people eat and describing what the food meant to her. She sighed, "My grandmother cooked like she was telling you something important, like the food was the message. I've been trying to figure out what she was saying my whole life, and I think running this truck is me still figuring it out." The host said it was the most beautiful thing anyone had said on that segment in 5 years. The clip went on the station's social media. It had 180,000 views in 48 hours. By March, Ida Mais had a 6-month waitlist for private events. By April, Maya had hired 2 cooks, a driver, and a catering coordinator. By May, a local food hall developer had contacted Patricia Osei's office with an inquiry about a permanent stall. The offer was a 400-square-foot corner unit in a new development on Ponce de Leon. Anchor position, 5-year lease at favorable terms. Maya walked to the space on a Tuesday morning with the developer and a contractor she trusted and stood in the corner for 3 minutes, without saying anything. The developer, a patient man who had learned to let people think, waited. She said, "I want the kitchen on the north wall. Better ventilation." He said he could do that. She signed the lease in June. Patricia called her the afternoon after the signing to go over a few administrative items from the business filings. At the end of the call, Patricia said, "I want you to know I've been doing this for 22 years, and I don't often get to see a case turn out like yours." Maya said, "I didn't do it to win anything." Patricia said she knew. That was why it counted. The food hall opened in September. Ida Mais occupied the corner unit with the kitchen on the north wall and the service window facing the main hall entrance, and the name in the same gold letters on a reclaimed wood panel above the window. The magnolia blossom in the same spot. The smell of sweet potato biscuits and honey butter moved through the building from the moment the kitchen came on at 6 in the morning. On the second weekend, Marcos came in. She did not see him at first. She was at the flat top, turning chicken thighs, and one of her cooks was calling out orders. She heard the hall filling up the way it did on Saturdays. The particular sound of a busy food space that she had learned to love. The overlap of voices, the scrape of chairs, the specific clatter of cups and trays. She looked up at some point and saw him standing at the counter. He was dressed well, the way he always dressed on weekends, and he was looking at the menu board with an expression she could not immediately read. She finished the thighs and handed them to her cook. She went to the counter. She sighed. "Marcus," he said. "Maya." He said the space was beautiful. He said the smell alone had made him want to try everything. He sighed she had clearly worked extremely hard and he was glad it was going so well. His voice was the same careful warmth as the voicemail. She listened to all of it without her expression changing. She sighed. "What would you like to eat?" He paused. He said, "I wanted to talk." She said, "You're welcome to order something and eat. The banana pudding is in the back case. The biscuits are almost gone." He looked at her for a moment. Aside, I wanted to say that I think I made a mistake. She said, I know. He said, I didn't understand what you had built. She said, no, you didn't. Aside, if we had just talked more. She said, Marcus? He stopped. She said, I'm going to tell you something and I need you to hear it completely. He built this because my grandmother believed in me and left me something real. And I was ready. Not because of what you did. Not in spite of what you did. You are not part of this story. His face moved in a way she recognized and had once tried to manage. She did not manage it now. She said, the banana pudding is $3.50. I hope you try it. It's very good. She went back to her station. He stood at the counter for a moment. Then he ordered the banana pudding. He sat at one of the high tables near the window and ate it alone, looking out at the hall. And then he left without ordering anything else and without coming back to the window. The Saturday crowd never thinned until 4. She closed the kitchen at 5:30, the way she always did, and helped her cooks break down the station. She wiped down the flat top herself the way she had done every night since Harlow's, a habit so deep it didn't feel like a choice. She covered the pans and signed the inventory sheet and told her team they had done a good job and meant it. She drove home in the Honda, which now had new tires, all 4 of them, replaced in March, balanced and aligned, the rear passenger that she had meant to patch for 2 years. She drove home on a Saturday evening in September with the windows down a little and Anita Baker low on the radio, and the city going amber around her, and the commissary kitchen locked, and the food unlocked and her name in gold letters on a panel of reclaimed wood on a building on Ponce de Leon. She pulled into the driveway. She sat for a moment with the engine off. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about Ida May in her own kitchen, in the house on Campbellton Road, moving through the space like she had built it, which she had from the inside out. One thing at a time, nothing wasted. Nothing performed. The food as message. The message as, I know what I have, and I built it, and it is enough, and it is mine. She got out of the car. She went inside. She left everything else at the driveway. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.